In the quiet snow of northern Idaho, a Marine veteran came home searching for peace. He bought a small wooden cabin at the edge of the forest, believing God had finally led him to a safe place to heal. No more nightmares, no more fear. Yet from the very first night, something felt wrong. His loyal German shepherd would stare at the living room floor and growl at the darkness below. Strange noises came from under the boards. Footsteps, whispers, a hidden life begging to be found. When he finally tore open the floor, he did not discover old pipes or a broken foundation. He found a secret bunker. Someone had been living beneath his home. Someone hunted. Someone desperate. Stay with this story until the end. You will witness courage, truth, and a miracle God sends at the perfect moment. If you believe faith still protects us in the darkest hours, please subscribe, share this video, and comment Amen. Thank you for watching, and may God bless you. Pine Creek, a small town tucked against the northern Idaho mountains, met the first hard week of winter with an iron sky and a wind that scraped across skin like sandpaper. The two-lane main street was flanked by dark timber facades and a diner's neon sign that hummed faintly in the cold. While beyond the last mailbox, the land heaved into forest, a quilt of pines rising in serried ranks. Snow had not yet settled into its deep-season silence. Instead, powdery flurries came and went on the gusts, leaving a thin grit of white on roofs and porches, melting, then icing again as the temperature seesawed below freezing. It looked unforgiving to anyone seeking comfort. To Michael Carter, it looked like relief. He turned his silver pickup onto the gravel drive of the house he had bought against the town's advice, the tires crunching as if chewing through glass. The cabin sat back from the road, a modest rectangle of weathered boards, with a narrow porch and a pitched roof shouldering the wind. Windows, two across the front, reflected the dim sky like slabs of slate. Behind the house, the forest rose so close it felt as if the trees had leaned in to eavesdrop. People had told him he paid too much. He thought he had finally found a fair trade. Money for quiet. Michael stepped out and drew a slow breath that fogged in front of his face. 38, broad-shouldered, and built by years of exacting discipline, he carried himself with the economy of someone who had measured the cost of wasted motion. His jaw was angular and set, often shadowed by a day or two of dark stubble. A faint crescent scar tugged the skin near his right temple, more noticeable when the cold made his complexion pale. His eyes were a deep brown that once broadcast certainty. Now they held a steady attention shaped by experience, not spectacle. The Marines had trained focus into him, then the blast that ended his service had deepened it. The leg aches came with the storms and eased when he worked. The city's horns, brakes, and sirens had made his sleep brittle. Here the wind spoke a simpler language. The passenger door opened with a thump, and a German shepherd jumped down, landing lightly despite his size. Rex was 3 years old, strong through the shoulders and ribbed with the kind of muscle that comes from work rather than indulgence. His coat was a classic saddle pattern, black along the back and tail, tan across his flanks and legs, with a mask that sharpened his gaze. His ears stood high, alert to every shifting noise. He was not a pet that sought constant touch, but a companion who watched first, then decided. Training had given him signals. Time had given him judgment. He glanced once at Michael, as if confirming the perimeter belonged to them now, then angled his nose into the wind and tested the air. Inside, the house smelled of old wood, dust, and something else that Michael could not name immediately. The front room stretched the width of the cabin, a simple space with a brick fireplace along the left wall and a low shelf beneath the front windows. A long rug, sun-faded in a rectangular pattern that suggested a couch had once sat there, ran toward a short hall. The boards under the rug creaked in two tones, a tired, honest groan and a thinner, newer click. Michael noticed without lingering. He set the first box on the shelf and stood a moment, listening. The wind worried at the eaves. From the forest came the dry twig chatter of a squirrel. The house itself seemed to hold its breath. He began to work. Boxes marked kitchen, tools, books, and winter gear made small islands across the room. He carried the folded cot from the truck, then the tool chest, then the crate with a portable camp stove. He had lived out of worse and for longer. A house did not become home because of furniture. It did so because of rhythm. He intended to build one. As he moved, Rex paced a slow circuit, then paused near the fireplace, then the center of the room, then the hall, nose low, tail steady. The dog's breath puffed in the cold air of the house. Michael made a note. Find drafts, seal gaps, get the chimney checked. By late afternoon, the light faded to pewter and the wind rose, a long moan threading the branches outside. Michael plugged an electric heater and coaxed the fireplace alive, feeding kindling and then split logs until the room accepted the heat. Rex settled on the rug, forepaws crossed, eyes at half-mast. Michael brewed coffee on the camp stove and drank it standing, feeling the warmth spread from the cup into his hands and up his arms. He walked the perimeter again and found the back door swollen in its frame, the latch stiff but workable. He checked the breaker box in a small closet and tested the hall light. Everything functioned, yet the smell returned, faint and flat, like air that had circulated where it should not. He pulled back the rug to sweep. The floorboards were old-growth fur, tongue and groove with a varnish that had mellowed into the color of tea. Near the center of the room, a four-board rectangle had nail heads that looked slightly brighter than the others, as if driven more recently. He crouched and pressed his weight on the seam. The board flexed less than he expected, not loose but different. He ran his fingers along the edge and felt a hairline gap. He did not pry. Curiosity and caution arrived together, and he had learned to let them walk side by side. He replaced the rug, but not the thought. As dusk folded around the cabin, the sounds of the town receded to the occasional drone of a distant engine. He fed Rex, then ate stew from a can, leaning against the wall with the bowl in his hand. The fire made small, polite noises. When the last orange threads of daylight dissolved, the cabin settled into its night posture, the kind that magnifies small noises until they seem like statements. Michael arranged his cot near the fireplace, layered a wool blanket, and sat to untie his boots, rolling his shoulders until the muscles released. He felt the familiar ache in the right leg, a dull pressure like weather trapped in bone. He breathed slow and deep until the joint stopped arguing. It began with a single, precise sound. Not the random tick of cooling timber or the exploratory shift of an old building meeting a new wind. A hollow knock, soft and low, arrived as if from a room beneath a room. Rex's head rose, ears pricking forward, eyes flaring to full brightness. Another sound followed, a faint scrape and a gentle thud, then silence that seemed intent, not empty. Michael lifted his hand, palm down, a signal to wait. Rex stayed, but his muscles gathered under his coat, ready to close distance. Michael turned off the hall light and the heater fan, reducing the house to the fireplace's whisper and the wind. He stepped onto the middle of the rug and pressed with his weight. Nothing. He shifted his stance and felt a delicate echo somewhere below, as if his footfall had an answer. He knelt and slid the rug aside again, exposing the rectangular run of boards with the newer nails. He took out a small flashlight from his pocket, its beam a white coin in the dim room, and traced the seams. He noted the nails had been countersunk and filled, then sanded flush. Whoever had done the work knew how to hide it from a glance, not from a hand. Rex moved to the far edge of the rectangle and stared, then stepped backward, nose wrinkling. He did not growl. Instead, he made a quiet sound in his throat, a register he used when something did not fit the map of his experience. Michael listened for the outside world, for branches against siding or a loose shutter. He heard only the wind drawing through the trees and the soft exhale of the fire. He tested one corner of the rectangle with a painter's putty knife from his tool roll, easing the blade into the seam where a faint flaw in the finish suggested a lift point. The knife met resistance, then found a shallow lip. He did not pry further. The day had been long and the margins narrow. He replaced the rug and stood, letting the flashlight beam drift across the room. If there was a space below, it had air and some heat, enough to carry sound. If something moved beneath, it did so with caution equal to his own. Night took its full shape outside. He let Rex out the back, watched the dog read the yard, then brought him in and slid the bolt. He set a small bell on the inside of the front doorknob, habit rather than fear, the kind of measure that never announces itself until it becomes necessary. He banked the fire and dimmed the lamp. Rex curled at the edge of the rug, facing the center of the room, as if he had chosen his watchpost with intention. Sometime after midnight, the hollow knock returned, softer, then the whisper of wood shifting against wood, then the kind of silence that stands on tiptoe. Rex rose in a fluid movement and fixed his gaze toward the middle of the floor. A low growl rolled once, in his chest, then he stopped, as if caution and obedience had tied in him the same knot that tied in Michael. The man stared into the dark and counted his breaths. He did not reach for a weapon. He reached for patience. He had paid what others called too much, because the place answered a question he had not voiced. Now the house asked one of its own. Under the floor, the sound waited. Michael listened with the attention of a man who understood that every unknown becomes a story or a mistake. As the wind pressed a long hand along the roof and the fire settled into coals, he kept his vigil while Rex, vigilant and unmoving, stared into the rug's shadow. The room held in a stillness that felt like the moment before a truth makes itself visible. By dawn, with the sky the color of forged steel and a glitter of hoarfrost on the porch rail, Michael knew two things. First, the peace he had purchased was real, even if it required defending. Second, somewhere beneath the living room floor, something had been altered. His house had a hidden seam. His dog would not look away from it. Neither would he. That night, as dusk returned and the wind rehearsed the same low song through the pines, Rex stood in the living room, hackles barely lifted, and faced the floor near the center of the rug. When the soft, deliberate scrape came again from below, the German shepherd fixed his stance and barked once, a sharp warning aimed at the unseen. Then, as if answering him, the house fell silent for a heartbeat, and Michael felt in his bones that the mystery had heard them both. Morning arrived with a hard frost gripping Pine Creek, a sheen of ice glazing the porch rails and turning every breath into steam. The forest behind the house stood darker than yesterday, as if night had left part of itself behind. Inside the cabin, the fireplace crackled softly, but the warmth did nothing to ease Michael Carter's alert tension. His instincts, sharpened by years of military precision, told him danger was not outside. It was somewhere below. Rex, the German shepherd with alert amber eyes, paced the living room floor with small, decisive steps. His ears twitched every time Michael neared the center of the rug. The dog's posture made one thing clear. The noises from beneath the boards were no trick of an old house. Michael retrieved a pry bar from his tool chest. He knelt and pulled the rug aside, exposing the rectangular section of differently nailed boards. The tool slid into the seam with a soft scrape, a careful pry, then another. Nails surrendered one by one. Soon, the boards lifted, revealing what had been expertly hidden: a hatch, the same aged wood, the same stain, the same grain. Yet underneath was darkness, cold, stale, and deliberate. Michael wiped dust from a recessed metal handle. Rex stood rigid at his side, tail level, whole body focused. With one steady breath, Michael pulled the hatch open. Hinges swung without squeal, smooth and maintained, proof that this secret was not abandoned. A narrow staircase fell into shadow. Michael drew a flashlight and stepped downward, boots planting silently, shoulders tight with readiness. The air grew colder, tinged with the scent of metal and canned food. The small room below looked like someone had tried to shrink a life to fit into a basement corner. Blankets compressed in the shape of a body, a stack of canned soup and beans, bottled water, batteries scattered next to a lantern, a paperback book folded open beside a metal cup. His light-traced walls reinforced with wooden beams. Someone expected to stay long. Someone expected to be hunted. Rex remained above, head lowered into the opening, growling low in his throat. Suddenly, a rapid rustle sounded from behind stacked crates. A man lunged. He hit Michael like fear given shape. Wild, untrained strikes. Not an ambush from confidence, but from pure survival instinct. Michael blocked, shifted his weight, and used the man's momentum against him. Within seconds, the stranger was pinned to the wooden floor. "Get away! You are not taking me!" The man gasped with panic breaking his voice. Rex burst down the stairs and planted himself beside Michael, teeth bared. The room filled with the threat of violence held by a single command. "Rex, hold!" Rex froze, growl simmering, eyes locked on the intruder. Michael grabbed the flashlight and illuminated the man's face. He looked to be mid-40s, unshaven with a patchwork beard roughening a jawline that might have once suggested confidence. His dark hair was uneven, hacked by scissors without care. His eyes were hollow from lost nights and stolen safety, framed by exhaustion that made him appear much older. His clothes were layers of necessity: flannel shirt, thermal undershirt, cargo pants with pockets stretched from overuse. His hands shook, not from weakness, but from expecting harm. Michael eased his hold, but did not step away. "Who are you?" he demanded, calm and controlled. The stranger swallowed hard, voice trembling. You are not with them?" "With who?" The question made the man's breath hitch. His gaze darted to the stairs, then the ceiling, then back to Michael. "I thought you were the ones from the company," he whispered, voice cracking. "They have been looking for me. Every night." Michael studied him with increasing clarity. Not a threat, not an intruder. A victim. "Name," Michael ordered. The man hesitated, fear wrestling with hope. "My name is David Miller," he finally said. "I am, or was, the owner of this house." The words pressed like a weight against the air. Michael felt Rex shift, responding to the tension. David's breathing quickened as he hurried to speak, as though confession might save him before fate noticed. "I did not disappear by choice," David gasped. "I found something I should not have seen, at the company. Something illegal, something dangerous." His hands clutched the floor, as if to keep from falling deeper into memory. "They tried to silence me. They nearly did. So I hid. I have been waiting for a chance. Waiting for someone who was not them." He looked at Michael with desperate relief and shame tangled together. "When you opened the door upstairs, I thought they had come again." Michael absorbed every detail carefully. The supplies, the smooth hinges, the fear that never slept. This was not a story born from paranoia. This was survival. Rex stepped forward and sniffed David, gauging truth in ways beyond language. His growl faded into steady breath. Only then did Michael lower the pry bar fully. David's shoulders collapsed with exhaustion, tears welling and quickly wiped away by a pride not yet defeated. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I attacked you because I did not want to die." Michael exchanged a look with Rex, the unspoken decision settling between them. The mystery under the cabin was no longer theory. It had a name, a face, a beating heart still holding out against the dark. And now, Michael was part of it. The underground room felt smaller once fear loosened its grip. Michael remained seated on the bottom stair, while David Miller occupied the far corner, his back pressed against crates, as if distance could shield him from memories. Rex positioned himself between them, alert yet calm, watching both men with instincts that had yet to fail him. The air carried the heavy quiet of something long withheld and now forced to the surface. Michael spoke first, voice measured. "Tell me what is happening." David rubbed a trembling hand over his unshaven jaw. The skin beneath his eyes was bruised by exhaustion, his features sharpened by months of stress. Finally, he exhaled like a man surrendering a weight too heavy to keep. "I worked for a technology company here in Pine Creek," he began. "Harrogate Systems. On the surface, we developed data management software for hospitals and government systems. Efficient, secure, trusted. That was the lie." He paused, gathering courage before continuing. "My job was compliance, making sure data was handled properly. One night I reviewed flagged entries from a secure server. I found files kept hidden from standard access, encrypted at the deepest levels, transaction records tied to shell companies, payments funneling through clinics that did not exist. The amount of money moving through our systems..." He swallowed. It was staggering. Michael's expression did not change, but his posture leaned slightly forward, reflecting increased attention. "Money laundering?" he asked. "And worse," David replied. "Manipulating patient identity records, creating people who never lived, erasing people who did. It was a perfect mechanism to move funds and hide crimes. When I pulled the files, alarms triggered. The next day, 2 men from the corporate security team visited my office. They looked at me the way hunters look at a trapped animal. Rex's ears twitched, recognizing the shift in David's breathing. "I pretended ignorance, but that night someone tried to break into my house. I escaped through the back door, hid in the garage, and overheard them searching. They spoke about making me disappear permanently. I realized running to the police would not save me. Harrogate has connections everywhere. So I returned to the house, removed one plank in the living room, and found the foundation hollow enough to carve out a room. I hid here, only coming out late to gather what I needed." He gestured to the preserved supplies around them. For months I have listened to footsteps above. Every few nights people return. They know I know something. They think patience will starve me into surrender. I thought you were one of them. His eyes lowered. That is why I attacked you. I'm so sorry. Michael considered what he had heard. The details aligned. The fear was too real to be fabricated. Why not leave? Go far beyond Pine Creek. David shook his head, pushing, fingers into his hair, nails biting against scalp. They would catch me. And if I vanish completely, their crimes remain protected. I need to get the evidence out. But I cannot risk stepping outside without proof that someone on the other side actually listens. Michael noticed David's hands, knuckles scraped raw, fingers jittering with adrenaline and malnutrition. The man had been bracing for death every day. No warrior, just a man forced into a war. Do you still have the evidence? Michael asked. David nodded toward a waterproof case tucked beneath a blanket. Everything is on a secure drive, password protected, double encrypted. If I die, at least the truth might survive if someone finds it. Michael's jaw tightened. He did not enjoy crusades. He wanted peace, healing. Yet trouble seemed drawn to him like iron to a magnet. Rex moved closer to David, sniffing carefully. The dog's tail lowered, posture softening. A silent verdict. This man was telling the truth. Michael stood, towering with calm resolve. You are not staying down here anymore. We will think of a plan, but I cannot help you if you remain a ghost. David's face contorted in conflict. Hope battling fear. If they return tonight and find me gone. If they return tonight, Michael replied, I will handle it. There was no bravado in his voice, only certainty, the kind earned through fire and broken bone. David stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, fragilely, he nodded. The weight of secrecy shifted, no longer buried beneath the floor. As they ascended the stairs, David blinked against the light of the living room, as if re-entering the world after too long underwater. His legs wavered, unused to standing without walls pressing close. Michael guided him toward the fireplace. Rex lay nearby, still watching the hatch. Even with truth revealed, danger had not lessened. It had merely changed shape. Michael glanced once at the boards now sealing the dark below. Tonight, the hunters might come again. This time, the house would not be silent. Darkness swept over Pine Creek faster than the day before, as if the sky wished to smother every trace of warmth. The wind sharpened into icy blades, cutting between the pines and sending loose snow swirling like restless ghosts. Inside the small cabin, the tension had weight. Michael Carter checked the locks again, then the windows, then the back door, every motion efficient and controlled. His mind had shifted back into a soldier's world where danger was not a question, only a schedule. Rex remained planted near the front of the living room, body low, ears pricked. The dog's gaze stayed anchored to the door, his instincts reading the night long before human senses could catch up. David Miller sat near the fireplace, anxiety etched into his face. He had been out of hiding for barely a few hours, and already the world above seemed as perilous as the one below. Michael turned off the last interior light. Darkness became a shield. Only the faint flicker from the fire outlined the room. If they come, he said, voice steady. I need you to stay low and move when I tell you to. David nodded, trying to slow his breathing. Rex let out a soft growl, a warning that arrived too early to be coincidence. A pair of headlights rolled slowly along the main road before cutting out completely. Snow crunched under deliberate boots. Michael froze. He had walked that way enough to recognize intent by sound. Whoever approached moved with training. Silence stretched, heavy and anticipatory. Then, 3 knocks against the front door. Not polite. Testing. Michael gestured to David to stay back. He signaled Rex down, though the dog trembled with contained energy. The door handle twitched, then stopped. Another figure scraped along the wooden siding outside. Footsteps split, surrounding the cabin. David whispered, shaking. "They found me again." Michael reached for the pry bar he had kept nearby earlier. Not ideal as a weapon, but better than empty hands. His real strengths were his body, his training, and Rex. Glass shattered. A masked figure dove through the living room window. Before the intruder's foot touched the floor, Rex hurled forward, a blur of muscle and teeth. He collided with the man, dragging him across the rug while Michael swung the bar down in a clean arc, knocking the attacker's weapon, a baton, across the floor. More boots thundered onto the porch. "Back door!" Michael barked. David scrambled to the kitchen as another window cracked under weight. Snow and glass sprayed inside. A second assailant climbed through, thick jacket and face covered by a black tactical mask. He gripped a suppressed pistol. Michael moved instantly, grabbing the attacker's arm with both hands and twisting downward, a muffled grunt. The gun fired into the floor. Rex spun from the first intruder and launched at the second, forcing him back through the broken window and out into the snow. "David! Move now!" Michael urged again. The 3 bolted into the woods behind the cabin, snow spraying beneath their steps. The trees swallowed them quickly, offering cover through chaos. Breath formed clouds that vanished into the dark. The cold clawed at their lungs, but adrenaline kept them running. Behind them, shouts, flashlights slicing the darkness, boots pounding snow. Michael led them deeper until the cabin vanished entirely from sight. He stopped behind a thick trunk and listened. The intruders were still close. Rex suddenly turned toward the left, ears forward, barking sharply. A flashlight beam swept the trees just ahead. Michael tackled David to the ground as a suppressed shot thudded into bark above their heads. Michael grabbed a branch thick as a club and threw himself toward the shooter. The masked man was taller, broader, likely trained, but Michael's strikes were faster, precise. A sharp blow across the wrist sent the gun spinning into the snow. A second hit to the abdomen folded the attacker. Rex arrived in an instant, snapping his jaws around the man's gloved forearm until he dropped. Snowfall thickened, turning their struggle into a blur of movement and breath. The remaining hunters regrouped, voices rising in agitation. They had expected a frightened man in hiding. Instead, they found a Marine who refused retreat. Michael hauled David up and whispered fiercely, "We do not run anymore. They want silence. We bring them light." David nodded, trembling from cold and fear but resolved in spirit. Something in him solidified, the shift from prey to witness. Michael guided them toward a ridge overlooking the town's faint lights. The intruders stayed behind, searching the dark terrain they no longer controlled. When the forest finally quieted, Michael allowed himself one breath of relief. Rex stood tall beside him, snow dusting his coat. His bark had saved their lives twice already tonight. His eyes still scanned the trees for threats that might return. The wind roared above the forest, carrying the storm deeper into Pine Creek. Michael looked at David, then toward the highway miles away. "They came for you," he said. "Next time we go to them." The decision was made. Attack mode. Tonight was only the beginning. The truth would not hide under the floor any longer. The snowstorm eased by dawn, leaving a brittle calm over the forest. Michael Carter stood on the ridge with the town faintly visible below, the lights still blinking with sleepy indifference to the violence that had crawled through his living room hours before. His breath came out in controlled measures. His mind, already in battle mode, sorted tasks into tactics. David Miller shivered beside him, not just from cold, but from the weight of what needed to be done. Exhaustion hollowed his cheeks, but a new determination stiffened his shoulders. He held the waterproof case tightly, fingers wrapped around it like salvation. Inside the case lived the crimes that had stolen his peace. Rex, dusted with frost across his tan and black coat, watched both men while maintaining sharp attention on the forest behind them. He had not forgotten the night's hunters. Michael spoke first, voice low. "We will split. I draw them out. You go straight to the Pine Creek police station. Find a female detective named Sarah Whitmore. She helped me once when I first bought the house. She is sharp, reasonable, and she hates corruption more than anyone I served beside." David blinked, processing. "What do I say?" "Tell her everything," Michael answered. "And give her the drive before anyone stops you." David nodded. Rex shifted his posture toward David, as if promising to guide him with more than instinct. Michael rested his hand briefly on Rex's shoulder, a silent command and a trust transferred. "Go. Now," Michael ordered. David broke into a desperate run downhill, boots punching through deep snow. Rex trotted ahead, clearing a path, constantly checking back to ensure the man followed. Michael stayed behind, scanning the tree line. It did not take long. Shouts, flashlights cutting through the woods. The masked men returned, angry at their failure during the night. Michael stepped into view on the ridge, perfectly visible. He raised his arm, waving like someone inviting a fight. The hunters turned their full attention toward him. Michael bolted sideways along the slope, drawing them away from David's route. Bullets whispered past him, hitting trees with sickening thuds. Snow exploded in cold bursts where shots landed too close. He moved with precision, using deep-rooted survival instincts. A fallen log became cover. A rock face shielded his movement. Every second stolen was a second David needed. Meanwhile, Rex escorted David to the edge of town. The snow-covered streets were quiet. Dawn's first colors stretched above the rooftops. Pine Creek Police Station sat small and square near the library, its flag frozen stiff in the wind. David stumbled inside. His entrance startled the officer at the reception desk, a middle-aged man with a round stomach and an unimpressed face. He eyed David suspiciously, taking in the ragged clothes and wild look. David gasped out the name, Detective Sarah Whitmore. "Please." Within seconds, a door swung open and Sarah stepped out. She was a woman in her early 40s, tall and lean, with dark auburn hair tied back in a strict ponytail. Her skin was pale from winters spent chasing trouble, and her hazel eyes had the mirrored surface of someone who never let a lie slip past her. A faint scar cut through her right eyebrow, a reminder of her own encounter with the wrong end of law. She approached David like she approached every case. Quick evaluation, quicker judgment. "You look like hell," she said. "Talk." David shoved the waterproof case toward her, hands shaking. "Harrogate Systems, money laundering, data manipulation. They're trying to kill me." Sarah's jaw locked tight. She snapped fingers at the receptionist. "Call FBI field office, now." Back in the forest, Michael tackled one of the masked men, stripping him of a knife and forcing him into the snow. Another hunter arrived too quickly, tackling Michael from the side. A fierce struggle churned the ground into chaos. Michael fought with silence, every move economical. Pain flared through his injured leg, but he refused to yield. A bark thundered across the woods. Rex had returned. The German shepherd crashed into the masked assailant's back, forcing him off Michael. Teeth ripped fabric. A scream tore the air. Sirens wailed in the distance. Blue and red lights flashed between the trees. Sarah had arrived with multiple Pine Creek officers and 3 FBI agents in dark winter coats. One of them, a tall African-American man named Agent Leonard Harris, directed the operation with swift gestures. His shaved head glinted under the snowy morning light, and his posture radiated unquestionable authority shaped by decades of federal pursuit. The forest transformed into a net closing around the criminals. One by one, the masked hunters were forced to the ground, handcuffed under rifles and trained dogs. Only when the last threat was neutralized did Rex finally relax, panting clouds into the icy air. David arrived moments later with Sarah beside him, clutching a blanket around his shoulders. His relief crashed into him so hard, he nearly collapsed. Agent Harris approached Michael, extending a firm handshake. "We will take it from here. You did the right thing." Michael simply nodded. Reporters would never hear his name. Award ceremonies would never invite him. But David's freedom was thanks to him and the dog now sitting proudly at his side. As the FBI escorted the prisoners away and the police documented the scene, Michael looked back toward his cabin, the damaged windows, the scarred floorboards, and beneath them, the hidden room where one man survived, and a conspiracy was broken. It was not peace Michael had bought. It was purpose. He placed a hand on Rex's head, his voice soft enough for only the dog to hear. "We're staying." Hope had a home again. In life, there are moments when the darkness feels overwhelming, when fear and loneliness convince us that hope is gone. Just like David hiding beneath the floor, or Michael searching for peace after the battles in his heart. Yet even in those moments, God is working. His miracles are often quiet. They come as a loyal friend, a stranger sent at the right time, or a second chance we did not expect. God never promised an easy road, but He promised that we would never walk it alone. Every hardship shapes us for a greater purpose. Like Michael, who thought he was escaping the world, only to become the very blessing someone else prayed for. When we stand for truth, even a small act of courage can change a life. If you are struggling today, remember this: God is already preparing your miracle. You may not see the light yet, but it is coming. Keep your heart open, because sometimes miracles arrive in the simplest ways, in kindness, in protection, and in love that refuses to give up. If this story has touched your heart, please comment Amen to share your faith. Like the video if you believe miracles still happen. Subscribe to join us for more inspiring stories. Share this message so someone else can find hope too. May the Lord bless you, protect you, and remind you that you are never forgotten. God is with you, today, tomorrow, and always. Amen.